Hi guys, we're Group One. I'm Eric Wilson, and our HB article was New Business Models in Emerging Markets. So basically, the article focuses on Western multinationals and how they're moving into new international markets. They actually expect to find 70% of their future growth in emerging economies and 40% of that growth in China and India alone. So, a pretty big deal for them. And the challenges they're facing are significant, but they aren't impossible. A lot of the companies, when they first move internationally, do fail, and especially in a new market where they don't completely understand the environment, is when they can run into issues. The other problem is a lot of multinationals import their domestic strategy to these international markets. And really, the article points out how it's much better to reconceive the business model, and a lot of multinationals fail to do so, and that's why so many have failed. So the article talks about identifying breaks the process, the strategy up into three bits. The first part being identifying unmet need. He talks about, or they talk about targeting the vast middle market in these international markets. A lot of times when the multinationals bring their old business model over, they are targeting a market that is pretty small because it's so high income to afford those products. Um, but yeah, in these target markets, we want to identify what can be improved. So, what are people struggling with now? What are the issues they're having? And identifying what people need rather than luxury items. A lot of these developing economies are much more need-based consumption rather than luxury consumption. So, that's definitely an important factor when you're moving into these markets. Um, and also, they point out how it's easier to improve an existing solution than to invent a new one. Just being that people are used to already solving this problem, so inventing a new one again is not really a winner in a market that's more needs based. The second step is blueprint a model for your business venture. Again, you must reinvent, revolutionize, or invent a new model. And that starts with the customer value proposition for your target market. And kind of depending on your strategy, either runs around your key resources or your profit formula. Um, and that in turn runs into your key processes. Two of the big factors are affordability and access. Affordability, of course, because these developing markets don't have the same buying power, and their middle class doesn't really have the same, again, buying power as the Western markets. So affordability is a big thing in not only the products that you offer, but really what the market is wanting. The other factor is access. So a lot of these developing economies don't have the same infrastructure as Western economies, so access is a big thing. It does no use to have a product if nobody can get to it or purchase it. Um, and a lot of what the multinationals must do is more than simply tweak and trim their current business model. So slashing prices, downsizing models and sizes and things like that isn't really enough to be successful in these international markets. And the last step of the process is implement and evolve. So quick adjustments based on early lessons are key. Agile, functional expertise from the area is important, but at the same time, it's important to have responsive teams to kind of gauge what's happening in the market and how they're responding to your product. Therefore, you can improve your product and make a bigger impact when you're actually launching. And also, they talk about conducting rapid experiments inexpensively. So again, just going back to figuring out how your product will do in the market and getting a better feel for that market and how they're going to adjust to the product. And then we have Yovita talking about why it's important.
Alright, I'm Yovita. I'm going to talk about why this issue is important. Around how the world live on less than $2.50 per day. This means that there's like very huge market there. Um, but then businesses are often unprofitable because companies have been using wrong business models. They import their business models from their country to the emerging markets, and this result in um, lower profit, and also because of that, they can only target highest income tiers. And they are also often forced to cut costs and lower prices, and this result in lower profit margin. And because of this, there's actually middle market where there's like they can't afford those more expensive stuffs, but then the low end products did not meet their needs. And now Lucas is going to talk about uh,
why we
he
chose
chose the article. Sorry.
Hello, I'm Lucas Castle. Um, there's a couple things why we chose this article. First off, it talks about the importance of the emerging markets. As we said, like 70% of the future growth has to do with the emerging markets. As it talked in the article, there's about 20,000 companies already that are in the emerging markets. And as you can see, there's 70% growth still. So like there's a lot of room for new companies to come in and start working there. Secondly, is the little innovation for the Western companies to succeed. For the most part, like you always hear about like companies trying to go in there and they fail and stuff. Like there's just certain small things like in the article I talked about that we thought were kind of cool and important. It's just like simple things like changing the business model, and then also things like not just cutting the prices, but like altering the product to your market. Um, then lastly, we talk about the highlights that we've learned in class and everything, and that's where Walker will come in.
So, some of the main facts about what we've learned in class is, first and foremost, this article related directly to the first HBR article that we read called Reinventing the Business Model. In this article, it was very similar in the fact that they made real-world examples about how business practices from maybe a host country would not work somewhere else. The Reinventing the Business Model article focused more on making us aware about microfinancing and the targeting consumers, which a business normally wouldn't usually target. Our article, on the other hand, focused more on how to actually implement a brand new business model in order to become successful in that country. Next up, for cultural dimensions, there is the idea of universalism versus particularism. In universalism, that is when the firm believes that their ideas work and that nothing should be changed because it's worked in the past. Particularism means that the circumstances will dictate how ideas and practices apply. Our article focuses exactly on particularism, and a perfect example would be the company of Godrej and Boyce, which Vicky will soon explain more in depth. Also, for managing across cultures, this was a very regio-centric positioning, which of course is the philosophy of management whereby the firm tries to blend their own interests with those of its subsidiaries on a regional basis. The firm will want to make money, but it is possible to target lower income areas without just making the profit right above zero. If they can figure out a way to get the consumer of the location to find a need for the product, they will be successful. Perfect example of this is in a certain region, Coke was struggling selling the full bottles of Coke. The full bottle of Coke in that area costed about what the average income it was per day. So the company reevaluated, cut the bottle in half, therefore cutting the price in half, therefore making Coke a much more successful in that area, and then they boasted success. So now Vicky is going to give you a perfect example of Godrej and Boyce.
Thank you, Walker. Um, One of the examples mentioned in the article is the Indian consumer durable company, Godrej Boyce. In workshop they conducted with the key managers in the appliance division, the first thing these managers want to know was, could Godrej provide a cheap, stripped-down version of high-end fridge? But apparently, they don't know what the poor or no fridge consumers really want. The rural people the team observed typically earn about $125 to $200 a month, and they are unable to afford conventional fridge in their own homes. Their users tended to shop daily and buy small quantities of vegetables and milk. The team conducted that what this group needed to do was to keep drink cooler than room temperature, a job markedly different from the one higher-end fridge do, which is to keep a large supply of foods on hand, cold or frozen. Here was an opportunity to create a fundamentally new product for the underserved middle market. The result was the Total Cool, a little coop, a top opening unit that at 1.5 times 2 feet and has enough room for the few items users want to keep fresh for a day or two. And Eric will talk about another example.
Alrighty, and one of the other examples the article mentioned was Safaricom and their product M-Pesa. Um, Originally, the product started off as a way for Kenyans to pay off their microloans. And what happened with their original market research was they found a much greater need to have consumer money transfers, so to transfer money to a friend or a family member. And really, they figured they found a huge target market for that. So basically, they went with that idea instead and developed this M-Pesa, which allows consumers to send money between anybody that has a mobile phone. So really convenient, really accessible, which was important in Kenya that didn't have a banking infrastructure. They found a ton of success with this. Within the first 4 years, they had 40% of Kenya's adult population using it, and they found that they were able to move into other markets, other similar markets like Egypt, Fiji, Afghanistan that don't have that banking infrastructure. And that's all we had.